place, maybe in the world. Shirat David. This is the first collab I've done here. So thank you. I'm so honored that you guys had me here. Thank you. Let's do a spin around. Everyone wave. You're famous. One day. So honored to be here, and I'm so honored to every single woman who left the house in the night. That's just enough, especially before Pesach Dayenu, right? Leaving in the evening is like you have to pay me a lot of money to get me out, or I have to be teaching or working or getting a salary to get out of the night. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. If you're watching this afterwards, I'm honored. Okay, so everyone is following along with these adorable source sheets. Hopefully now you have there's the 4 cups of wine. So this class is titled Men Are From Matzah, Women Are From Wine. Now this teaching actually stems from the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal taught that the 3 matzos are in the schus of the 3 avot, and that the 4 cups of wine are in the schus of the 4 imahot. He was very brief about it. Then, what we're going to be learning later on today is that the Shlucha then expounded and actually took that to the Shlucha HaKadosh, who's an acronym for the Shnei Luchot Brit. He then took that into more detail, further detail, and then actually explained how each wine represents the one of the imahot. He explained how the first cup of wine represents Sara Imenu, the second cup of wine represents Rivka Imenu, the third cup of wine Rachel, and the fourth cup of wine Leah. I did have 2 cups of wine before starting to teach today, so might need help with just like details and names. I didn't. What doesn't usually hit me. Okay, so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun. So before we get into the details of why each cup represents the 4 imahos, first we're gonna go back and understand what Pesach is all about. What is really going on spiritually, Hasidically on Pesach, and this is based on many teachings of Hasidus and Kabbalah. Okay, let's jump right in. Where's a lot of babies? Okay, so first, why are women compared to wine and men compared to matzah? It's much more than just the fact that there's 3 avos and there's 3 matzahs that we eat and 4 imahos and 4 cups of wine. It is way deeper than that. That's just the scratching the surface. So first, let's go back and understand. Actually, in the Gemara and Pesachim, there's a lot of discussion on why we even drink 4 cups of wine. Nowhere in the Torah does it mention drinking wine on Pesach. It only says that we should remove all chametz from our homes, right? And we should eat matzah. The biblical commandment is really just to eat matzah, and then the Chachamim added that we should have 3 matzahs representing the 3 avos. Where did wine come into play? Wine, so the Gemara has different answers actually of why we have 4 cups of wine. But the 4 is a big theme of Pesach. 4 is kind of like the number that keeps coming up in Pesach, right? We have the 4 cups of wine, the 4 sons, and the 4 questions, right? 4 is a big theme in Kabbalah. For whoever was at the Tanya class, right? We know we have 4 worlds in Kabbalah. We have the 4-dimensional reality that we live in. We have 4 layers in our soul. So the world is really a 4-dimensional reality. And the Chachamim say, where did this 4 come in? The 4 is actually based on the fact that in the Torah, when Hashem took us out of Egypt, which is what we're celebrating, he mentioned the Geula in 4 different ways. There's 4 Lashonos, or 4 expressions of Geula, right? So each one of the cups of wine represent the 4 Lashonos of Geula. That's the main conclusion that the Chachamim come to in the Gemara. So what are the 4 Lashonos of Geula? Where Hashem said, V'hotzeisi, oh my gosh, I wish I wrote them down. V'hotzeisi eschem, that I took you out, Lios Mitzrayim. Oh my gosh. I have it. I took you out. So the first lashon is the hotzeiti. I schlepped you out. Then v'hitzalti, right? I saved you. I delivered you. The third lashon is v'ga'alti. I redeemed you. Eschem bezroya and tzviya, with an outstretched arm, with shvatim gedolim, and with great judgments and miracles. And then the 4th cup is v'lakachti eschem li la'am v'yisam li l'lokim, and I will take you to me to be a nation. Now, the Chachamim felt that this is such a pivotal part of the Gemara of the holiday celebration of Pesach that we should celebrate and commemorate it by having 4 cups of wine. Now, why wine, right? Why couldn't we just add a 4th matzah, right? Just have 4 matzahs to represent the 4 Lashonos of Geula. So this is where it gets even deeper, because now we're going to understand why wine is the feminine, and why we even had to have wine to begin with. Why couldn't we just keep it to what the Torah says, which is have the Korban Pesach, like have a slaughter and lamb, right? We could have and have it with matzah, and have a 4th matzah to represent that 4th expression. Now, to make it even a little bit, to take you on a little tangent, just later, remind me to talk about the 4 and the 5 if we have time, if we get to it later. There's a whole debate, a huge debate amongst the Chachamim of whether there should actually be a 5th cup of wine, because there's a 5th expression where Hashem says, right, v'hevesi, and I will take you to be my nation, which represents Mashiach. So the debate, there are some people that strongly felt that we should be drinking a 5th cup of wine, right? And then wisely, they're like, no way, no one's gonna make it a bed, right? It's gonna be a disaster. They're never gonna have a second Seder. Like, don't do it. No, that's not the reason. So the compromise is the cup of Elijah. That it's We pour it, but we don't drink it. Because Rashi held that to drink it would be adding in Torah, right? So there's a lot more to that debate and what it holds. But so now we're left with the 4, right? The 4 cups of wine representing the 4 Lashonos of Gula. But now, why wine? Why not just make it based on matzah? So now we understand, to get to this, we're going to go back and now understand the difference between matzah and wine, right? Well, right, one is a solid, one's a liquid, right? But yeah, Mindy.
Matzah gets stale and wine gets better with age.
Exactly. Men and matzah. That was my first thought as well. But that is true. Well,
I didn't say that, though.
you didn't say that. You did.
No, the Chachamim didn't say it.
Right. But they said it in other words. So let's go back a little bit and understand what Pesach's all about. So Pesach is not just a celebration. On the surface, it's retelling the story of Hashem saving us. But it's, in truth, we have a commandment every single day to remember the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And on Pesach, we learn that we are re-experiencing Yetzias Mitzrayim in our personal way. That Yetzias Mitzrayim is not just something that happened to our ancestors many years ago. Yetzias Mitzrayim is something that we experience every single day of the year. And even more so, it's something that we re-experience in ourselves, in our bodies, and in our souls, especially during the whole month of Nisan, and even more so during this time of liberation. And what it means is the Chassidus tell us that Mitzrayim is not just a place on the map, but Mitzrayim actually means Meitzar. It comes from the term to be in a narrow place, mina Meitzar karasika, right? When it says I call to you from my narrow place, it means a place of limitation, when I'm feeling like I'm in my own Egypt. So Mitzrayim represents all of us being stuck in our own personal Egypt, and any limitation in our lives that might exist. And leaving Mitzrayim, Yetzias Mitzrayim, is not just the Jewish people leaving Egypt. It represents every one of us being gifted with the gift of freedom that we can all now experience, being free from all constraints, any limitation, any narrow strait that we find ourselves in, that we are above all of it. Even when nature seems to say that we're stuck in it, we have the ability to be free of every single physical constraint, emotional constraint, psychological constraint, as we'll see throughout today. So leaving Mitzrayim is really an experience that we do in ourselves. And when we look, the way Chassidut looks at the whole Pesach Seder is different messages and how we can it is literally the same way that the Jews left Egypt. Then it's instructions for us on how we live. We leave the Egypt inside of us, how we leave all the limitations. And what freedom means, not being confined or constrained or limited by anything that limits me being the greatest potential that Hashem made me to be. So freedom means me being able to manifest my greatest potential as Hashem made me. So for a Jew, that means being able to connect to Hashem and keep all the Torah mitzvos, because we are given an extra neshama as a Jewish person, an nefesh elokit, that's able to connect to Hashem in 613 infinite ways. So being free means being able to express all of that, right? Being a woman means being able to express our femininity. So whatever that freedom means, and in each individual, freedom means something else, right? For someone who's an artist, freedom means the ability to play music or play art or to teach or to speak or to share. And for each person, freedom looks different. So freedom is being able to utilize and maximize all of the gifts and all the greatest potential that you have within you. And anything that covers that up, anything that constrains that, anything that holds you back from that is Mitzrayim, is a limitation that we need to be free from. And that we are given the potential to be free from that originally from when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, but every single day, and especially this power that Hashem gives us to rise above and break free of every limitation comes back every year in its most intense time in the whole month of Nisan. And in Nisan, in the month in the day of Nisan, when the moon is the fullest, which is when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, it's the day when, on Yud Nisan, on the first night of the Seder, when this energy of freedom is so intense and we can break through any constraint that we have. So in truth, the way that the Chassidut looks at the Seder is the 15 steps, right? There are 15 steps to getting out of our personal Egypt. Each step of the Seder is another way. And cleaning for Pesach is making space to receive the gifts that Hashem wants to give us, the light and the greatness that Hashem wants to give us, the freedom and these immense light that Hashem wants to give us again on Pesach every year to each one of us. Pesach cleaning, and this was the class that I'm not to save all the people who already heard this here, but in Pesach cleaning in a deeper way is removing is just like when you need to make space for someone to give you a huge gift and you know where to put it, you won't be able to utilize it. So in ourselves, in our soul, to receive all the light that Hashem wants to give us, if we have no vessel, if our vessels are full with schmutz and dirt and ego ego telling us you're not enough, and all the toxic things we subscribe to, right? All of the things that we attach ourselves to during the year, Pesach is a time to let go and to give away and to donate and to repurpose and to cleanse ourselves. So when we're cleaning, it's actually an internal process, which is why even though I'm leaving for Pesach, I still Pesach clean in some way, because it's an inner process of shedding layers to make space for the gifts that we have on Pesach. So really, Pesach cleaning is an opportunity to relieve ourselves of the schmutz that the schmutz of the winter, that we cover ourselves up with defense mechanisms and so many things that we might use to protect ourselves in the cold months. And now it's our time to let them go and to cleanse and just to be a pure, to scrub our souls clean, to take off anything that might be covering the purity, to make space to receive the gifts of Nisan. So that's a little bit of an intro to understand the context of where all this is coming in. So we look at the way the Chassidus read, the way that all people who learn Chassidut look at the Seder and even the 10 Makos as 10 ways to, break any constraints that we have. So each plague is a way to overcome, right? Turning water into blood is not just a miracle, it's turning coldness into warmth, right? The first step, we say, to breaking free of our limitations, the same way that Hashem had 10 plagues, it was intentional, and it's a message for us. Each of the plagues is another message for us, and how we can leave all limitations that we have, so we can learn from every single one of the makos, from every single step in the Seder, another way, right? Even every time we dip, dipping is tevilah, which is bittul, right? Which is becoming submissive, just submitting to the light of Hashem, and that's what really the essence of all of Pesach is about, and that's why we dip so many times, because just like when we women dip in the mikvah, we're submitting to something greater that's just holding us and carrying us and remembering. That's truly what one of the main essential ideas of Pesach, and that connects to matzah, right? Eating something that's just plain, that hasn't had a chance to rise, that's the bare bones, right? That's tasteless, and that reminds us just to let go of everything that covers up and just be pure, be our essential, go back to being our pure essential selves. Like a baby who's born without anything on it. On Pesach, we're rebirthed. We're being rebirthed by Hashem, and we get to go back. So everything has a deeper message to it. And this is really just the intro. So now let's get into. Now we understand what Pesach's all about. So let's have something to eat. L'chaim to that. L'chaim to all of us in this month being able to leave our personal Egypt, leave whatever is holding us back from manifesting the greatest selves that Hashem, the picture that Hashem sees of us, right? To being able to see ourselves the way that Hashem sees us and the potential that Hashem sees in us and puts into us every single day, and the uniqueness that we have, being able to break through all of the limitations that hold us back. And Nisan is a time when Hashem literally gifts us to just really break free in a way that's not the difference between Pesach. Every day we can break free of our limitations. It says that Hashem, all Jewish people are above mazel, we're above limitation, we're above nature. We learn this in so many ways, but in Nisan it's different. In Pesach actually it's different, because usually it's a step by step. It's like to get from here to here, I have like steps. It's one step after another. It's a climbing a ladder, right? My whole process, and sometimes there's 3 steps back, and that's okay, right? It's a long journey for me to get from here to here. Sometimes I'm back where I started 100 times before I climb. But Pesach means to leap. Lifsoach, right? To leap over, right? So it's not that I'm walking from here to here in one step after another, but I'm getting from one state and I'm skipping all the steps and just suddenly I'm free. So the way that Hashem redeemed us on Pesach was one day we were slaves, and within a moment we were free, and that's why we eat matzah, to remember how quickly it goes. We can go from being in one state and jumping over all the hoops. So Passover literally means that we can pass over all of those steps that we think we need to take. So if we have in our mind, if somebody has in their mind that I'm going to be, in this place, for me to get here, I need to do this, and this needs to happen. Hashem's like, throw that out the window, right? Pesach, we're tapping into my energy. This is Hashem carrying us. Just submit. Let go of all the things you're holding on to the limitations in your mind, and submit to knowing that Hashem is very capable of jumping over all the steps, of leaping over. So it's a very powerful time. It's a time when normally you might be able to get somewhere, but in Pesach, Hashem lifts us, and if we submit to it, and if we can flatten our perceptions and our ego, that what our ego tells us, that, I'm the one who needs to do it, I'm just really submit and allow Hashem to take us, then we can really jump over and be at the place where we want to be in a much, much larger leaping way. So, wine. Okay. So, in short, we're going to shorten this, but wine, when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, we learned that in Nisan, the energy is from Hashem taking us out. It's an act that Hashem does to us. We're very passive in this act, right? We're really just making space, and Hashem is doing most of it, right? We're being lifted by Hashem. So the first 3 Lashonos of Geula represent Hashem taking us out, like V'hotzesi, V'hitzalti. Hashem takes us out, schlepped us out. Most of us didn't even want to leave. Hashem had to literally shoo us out and say, go already. V'hitzalti, V'ga'alti, I redeemed you. But the 4th one, V'lakachti, means I took you to me, and it became a relationship. It wasn't just Hashem just forcing us out, but it actually became a 2-way relationship that wasn't just Hashem with a one-way relationship. It was actually a real relationship that had love and it had meaning. So the Chachamim said that matzah, because matzah represents complete core and essence, just going back to complete humility, to just the bare bones, it couldn't represent what wine really represents, and the four Lashonos represent, which is the steps of becoming not just becoming a partner with Hashem. So we have many different relationships with Hashem. The Matzah represents where Hashem is our father, right? Where we just do what our father says, or our king. But the wine represents that stage where Hashem said, I don't want to just be your parent, I want to be your lover. And that is going to have to come from you as well. And that's why when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, we had those 49 days to grow our connection to Hashem. So when we go to Har Sinai, we said yes, right? We have to accept that. And we said, we want this. This is something that we want. We're choosing this as well. It has to be a two-way relationship, not just me parenting you, but that's not the ultimate relationship Hashem wants with us. Rather, it should be something that we're invested in, that we choose to do, that comes from us, right? The relationship and the religion that we're meant to have is something that we choose to be in because we want that loving relationship with Hashem as well. And the Chachamim said that that's not what matzah is. Matzah is the opposite of that. Matzah represents the foundation of our relationship with Hashem, the things that are given to us. The foundation before everything is like naseh, right? We will do it without the bittul that we have. And we learn that we need to have the bittul. Before we can have the loving relationship, there has to be the bittul, right? Bittul, which means just saying Hashem knows best, right? That I'm going to put myself aside and flatten myself because Hashem made me. He made the world, right? And He's God, and I'm going to trust that He knows best. And that's where the foundation of our avodas Hashem has to happen. And that's where the three matzos come in. And that's a masculine trait. And after that masculine trait of bittul, then comes, well, it's not enough to just have a relationship where a child just has to listen to their parents because I'm your parent, right? And just trust me because I'm your mom and I know best. After that, Hashem says, that's not the ultimate relationship I want to have with you. That's the foundation. But ultimately, we are to be married at Har Sinai. And that takes a lot of avodah from our part. And the fourth step of choosing Hashem on our own, right? Choosing to be in this relationship and us having to say yes to Hashem, and Hashem saying, if not, then, I'm not going to be in that relationship with you. And that's where it's not just the plain matzah, the plain tasteless matzah, like Mindy was saying, that that wine is the exact opposite, that the longer it sits, the better it tastes, right? The more pleasurable, the more we sit with our relationship with Hashem, the more we gain from it. It's like a long-term relationship. So the Chachamim literally said that we can't use matzah to represent the four expressions of love and a loving relationship because that's not what matzah is. Matzah is flavorless, and our relationship with Hashem has to have taste. It has to be nurtured. It has to be cultivated. It has to come from deeper place inside, and that can't be represented by matzah, which is flat and plain. So that's where wine comes in. So now, skip a little bit. It's actually brought down in Mishlei. Shalom Melech says, Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al tijosh Torah simecha. And over there, Rashi says that Shema b'ni musar avicha is masculine, right? Listen, my son. And that's referring to the written Torah. And the written Torah is compared to is the masculine part of the Torah, which is the foundation, which is mandated by the like the matzos. And the al tijosh Torah simecha is the oral Torah, which is expounded on the written Torah. Now, this is the basis for understanding that all masculine and female, let me speak a bit. So the male aspect represents the written Torah, the Torah Shabbat, the Torah that was given to us, which is the foundation of all Torah, which is like matzah. And the feminine represents oral Torah, the Torah Shabbat Peh. All of the rich and wealth and the Torah that came from the written Torah represents the feminine part of Torah. It's the expounding on it. And in creation, in our physical body, we see the same thing as well. That when creating a child, the male gives the foundation, and then the woman takes that and expounds on it and creates from a seed that contains all of the potential for human being. The female takes that foundation and then grows it and develops that into an entire human being. Just like the oral Torah literally takes the foundation for mitzvos, but without the oral Torah, we wouldn't even know how to keep mitzvos. We need Torah Shabbat. We need the feminine to expound on Torah Shabbat. And similarly, with every person, we need to have masculine and feminine, their partnership. One doesn't work without the other. We can't have wine without the foundation of matzah and bittul. We can't have a human child without the foundation, the seed and the potential of the masculine. We can't have written Torah without oral Torah. We can't have oral Torah without written Torah. There are two things that can't be disconnected, but they're so different from one another, right? One is like they say that the masculine, the oral Torah, what you see is what you get in the oral Torah, and that's a masculine trait. In all of us, we're all masculine and feminine. So masculine is what you see is what you get, right? What they say is what you mean. When they say I'm fine, they mean I'm fine. When a woman says I'm fine, right? There's so many layers. We're layered, right? It could mean a lot of things. It could mean I'm fine. It could mean I'm not fine, right? It could mean so many things. And in so many ways, it's not always, it's the Torah Shebel Peh, right? You have to read between the lines. It's not direct. It's not literal. It's not masculine. And that's why the masculine represents just the matzah. What you see is what you get. You see matzah, you eat matzah. It's pretty much similar, right? But with wine, you never know. This could be bitter and gross, right? And you never know. Wine really grows and develops with age, and it cultivates. So wine is so different than matzah, and the feminine attributes are so different than the masculine. And the Chachamim felt that these are the two core foundations that we need in our Seder to have this, the masculine, which comes from the Avos, and the feminine attributes in the Seder, which really are taking our relationship to the next level and saying, yeah, we need the foundation of Bittul, because before anything, in this foundational stage of our relationship with Hashem, we need to have the core of Pesach is submission. And submission and Bittul, and have a class that went really, really well. And with Chametz, I would say, wow, I did really well. And with Matzah, I would say that was an amazing class, thank Baruch Hashem. The same thing happened, right? But and I could also have a class where one person or 0 people show up. And with Chametz, I would say, I'm such a failure. No one likes me. And I would take that on myself. I would say that I'm not good enough. And with Matzah, I would say, thank you, Hashem. Hashem knows, this was all Hashem. Whatever happened was from Hashem. So Matzah is taking the ches and opening it up on top to make an opening for Hashem and turning it into hay. So a hay, the mem and tzaddik of Chametz and Matzah are the same. The hay and the ches are almost the same, but we take that ches and we make an opening above for Hashem. So we can be as great as we can say, Moshe can know that he's the greatest man on the face of earth, but he knows that everything he has is from Hashem. Hashem can take it away from him in a moment. So we can have our highs, right? We can know how we can say thank you, Hashem. When someone compliments us, being humble or is true humility is not saying, oh, it was nothing, I did nothing, it wasn't me or anything. That's false humility. That's chametz. True humility is saying Baruch Hashem, like accepting the gifts that Hashem gave me and saying, it's Hashem. Yes, I have so much goodness in my life, but I could see that opening in the ches and look and know that everything is from Hashem. So it's going back to the core and realizing that all I am is Hashem willing me into existence for one more day. And everything that I have is just a gift from Hashem. That's what true humility is, and that's the foundation. And being just a child or a servant that goes after his master is the foundation of our avoda to Hashem. And we have to have that bittul that we started off as Hashem's servants and we developed into a marriage with Hashem. And the foundation is the humility. And when we have that bittul, then we can then build up on that. And the feminine is to build up and cultivate the relationship, the depth of our relationship with Hashem, where it's not just, when I used to say to my teens that I used to teach in high school, like, you have to stop being religious because your parents told you to be religious and because you grew up that way, and you have to start developing that relationship. Now's your time, and especially when I teach in seminary, now's your time to develop your relationship with Hashem, because you're talking to Hashem, because it's yours, and having it become deeper, and it's just, it's an immature relationship. So we were in that immature stage when it's just matzah, when it's just, because Hashem took me out and I have to do this. That's the foundation. It's really important, but it needs to come with wine. It has to come with depth, with taste, with flavor, with your own flavor, with your richness, with your own unique personal relationship with Hashem that has nothing to do with anyone else. So that is really there's a lot more why women represent wine and men represent matzah, but that's the gist of it. So cheers to us. And l'chaim to all of us, really, really getting wiser, deeper, and more beautiful with age.
Who's driving you home, Kiki?
She's not drinking, she's just sipping.
We're just sipping.
She just,
We
it's an accoutrement.
get better with time.
You just gave me my Josh with the Seder.
I have a bunch of them.
I'm gonna write it down.
Well, we all know that the Gemara that says that nichnas yain yatsa sod, right? That the woman, and just like women represent pnimius. So one more aspect is that the masculine is external and the woman is the pnimius. So just like the external part of Torah that we see the words of the Torah given to us, and then there's all of the depth in between the lines of the Torah that the Chachamim had to work to expound, right? That we're under the line. That's the feminine. And even in the body of the person, the reproductive or most essential male organs are external, and the most essential female organs are internal. And we already see that the wine is something that it says wine goes in and it brings out something that's on the inside, right? And matzah is very different than that. It doesn't have that same effect at all. It's bland, it's plain, it's what you see is what you get, right? It's the external, and that's what it is. So we see in so many ways that how matzah and wine represents the masculine and feminine. And we're not stereotyping men and women one way, but rather understanding that Hashem, it says in the Torah that Zachar and Nekeva bara osam, that Hashem he created each one of us masculine and feminine. So we're understanding that the male within us, the female within us, and that we need both of them. Each human being needs both to be complete. So let's get into this. We're going to dive right into the 4 cups. This is where your source sheets are in handy. This is the teachings of the Shalat. Okay, so the Shalat has beautiful teachings on comparing each of the 4 cups of wine to one of the Imahos. And this is so powerful because we're now looking at the 4 cups of wine, not just as 4 mitzvahs that we have to do to be Yotza the Seder from the Chachamim, and women are also chayav. If someone doesn't drink the 4 cups of wine, they have to do the Seder again. If they threw it up, they got to do it again, right? There's very little room. You can have grape juice, you can have to have a revius, you got to do it again. So it's really serious. But that's so much more than that. It's an opportunity to literally internalize and grow each level. So this is how I see it. That Hashem's not repetitive, right? Not at all. God doesn't repeat himself. So if Hashem said 4 different Lashonos of Geula, then we're actually understanding that there's 4 stages of redemption. Each Lashon of Geula represents another stage of redeeming, of the Jewish people's redemption, another stage of our leaving our layers that we're trying to break free through in Mitzrayim. And each one of those is another layer. And we're going to go through those. And each of the Imahos gives us a strength to break through another layer. So drinking the 4 cups of wine is literally internalizing and drawing down the ability to break through another layer. So as we're drinking the first cup of wine, we're breaking through a layer of limitations, of mitzarim, of being trapped and being limited. And then we're going through another layer, and we're growing higher and higher until we're free of all limitations. So it's an act of growing, of like accessing, just like in this week's Tanya class, we said that there's 4 coverings of God's light, infinite light. So we're breaking through these coverings because these coverings are only exist for us, right? Like we said, if there's a light, anyways, doesn't matter. We're each level, we're breaking through another cycle, another layer of limitations that holds us back from seeing things as they are in MS and seeing things as they are in truth and being as finite as our true infinite neshama is. So the first cup corresponds to Sara. Okay, so what is the first cup represent? The first cup is leaving our physical meitzarim, our physical boundaries, in any physical limitation that's holding us back in our life. So usually in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Maslow developed that hierarchy of needs. In order to manifest your greatest self, you need to start with the basics, right? If somebody is starving, they're not going to be able to actualize their love usually. I think that some people defy Maslow's, but in the most part, you're not going to be thinking about your love if you're thinking about food and shelter, right? So the first level of redemption, where Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, was physically liberated us. So it's literally Hashem saying that it's physical liberation. I will bring you out from under the burdens of Mitzrayim, right? They physically liberate us from the physical labor that we had. This is the promise, and this is us being able to internalize and break free of any physical limitation in our life, right? We all are limited because we're physical by time, by money, by space, by any physical limitation that's holding us back from being the goddess self that we could be. So that is the first cup of wine, physical liberation. And Mitzrayim was literally leaving Mitzrayim, being slaves, and then in a moment not being slaves, right? Not being enslaved. So in this cup, we're davening, and now is a good time we can practice. We're davening and benching and praying to Hashem to remove any physical suffering and to give us physical liberation from anything, any suffering that we have or anyone has, any pain that we're experiencing, any illness, anything physically, any worry that we have with parnasa, any worry that we have with anything physical. This is the cup when we're internalizing and davening to Hashem to remove this barrier and to allow us to be free and to jump over and not have to do it just to be to imagine and manifest being above all of those limitations. This is connected to Sara Imenu because so this is the cup that we say during Kiddush. First of all, Kiddush is when we separate the holy. We're making Kiddush on Pesach, and Kiddush, the Shlucha says this, that Kiddush separates the holy and the mundane. So we're separating the physical mundane life from the holiness. And Sara was the one who bequeathed to us that from Sara Imenu, she was the first person that anyone who came from Sara there afterwards, she gave to us the gift that if we would birth a child, that they would be born with a neshama. Before that, they had to literally become Jewish. Sarah had to convert and become Jewish. They weren't born with a neshama, but Sarah gave to us that anyone who is Jewish, any woman who is Jewish, their child is given a neshama and gifted a neshama in their body. So she was able to connect that physical connection to Hashem. So we're accessing our physical liberation on this level. Sarah also, Imenu, also suffered a lot physically. She didn't have children for many years, so she gave up a lot physically. She traveled for many places. She was taken by 2 kings against her will. So she had a lot of physical suffering in her life. So in Sara, we see that liberation from physical suffering and from any physical limitations in our life. Now I took the Shlucha doesn't say this, but there are so many beautiful Jewish heroines in the story of Pesach that really seem to connect here. So this is where my friend actually connected this, and I changed it a little bit. We're able to, in each one, see a parallel in each of the cups and mention and remember a different one of the female heroines in the story. So in this one, we parallel Tzipora, because Tzipora also was a convert, so she was able to draw down a neshama into her physical body. But even more than that, Tzipora sacrificed a lot physically. She sacrificed her life to save Moshe's life when she gave her son a bris, when there was a snake there on the way. She gave her son the bris, and she sacrificed her life, her son's life, and she gave up her entire life for Moshe, to be with Moshe. She also even gave up her physical life with Moshe. So Zipporah's journey was a very physical journey. So that's why I like to mention Zipporah during the first cup of wine and remember her and draw strength from Sara Imenu to overcome any physical. And just like Sara physically, what I really want to say is that just like Sara physically was not able to have children at 100 years old, and she was able to overcome that in this crazy miracle, and Hashem was able to push her past that physical limitation, that we can draw that from Sarah and overcome anything that even seems beyond that we need a miracle to overcome. So that's our first cup, l'chaim. If anyone wants to dive in, we can all bench each other. Anything that we're all experiencing, we should all overcome. Physical. So in short, we have Sara Imenu, physical liberation. The second cup, we could pour your second cup. You don't really have to, I just like to. You pour your second cup. I'm very hands-on, I'm visual. The second cup corresponds to Rivka Imenu. The second cup is a merit of v'hitzalti eschem mitachas v'asam. Now, why does Hashem have to save us from our avoda if he already, right? He just said, already hotzesi eschem mitachas v'asam. What's he doing now, right? Hashem said, I took you out from your physical burdens, so why are you saving us from now? So we understand that there's so many types of imprisonment, and there's so many bondages, and this bondage that Hashem is taking out from is not physical bondage because we're already free. Hashem took us out of Egypt, but we see now, and more than ever, and now we're more in tune, that even if somebody is physically free, there's psychological bondage that could be so much more oppressing than physical bondage sometimes. So Hashem said, it's not enough that I took you out of Mitzrayim, I also have to take you out of the psychological bondages, the psychological limitations, and the psychological entrappings that are imposed on you from being a slave for so many years. I have to free you from even being a slave. And we see this in so many ways. So this is a promise of delivery and psychological, emotional, and freedom from any enslavement that's not physical enslavement, but emotional enslavement. And sometimes that could be more paralyzing than a physical enslavement. Sometimes somebody could be stuck in their bed, not because they're tied down to their bed, but because psychologically they might have mental health struggles, they might have anxiety, they might be afraid. There can be sometimes the bonds of emotional, psychological fears and enslavement are even more powerful than physical bonds. So Hashem says it's not enough to be physically free, right? We see actually in the story of Mitzrayim that 4/5, 80% of the Jewish people didn't want to leave Mitzrayim. 80% stayed. So out of every 100, 80 people didn't want to leave, not because they were so affected by psychological imprisonment that they couldn't even imagine what it meant to be free, right? And we see that today, where people are free from prison and they can't even imagine what it would like to be free. I see so many women who are trapped in abusive relationships who are afraid to leave, not because someone's physically holding them back anymore, but because they're psychologically enslaved. They don't even know what it means to be free. So this is our bracha to the next level, right? So if somebody is physically free, our bracha in this cup is rising to a higher level of liberation and saying that it's not enough, even if we have physical liberation, it's enough. We need to also access this potential. And I think for me, this is probably the biggest liberation from everything psychologically holding us back from being, sometimes we're our own worst enemies, right? Our fears, our insecurities, our perfectionisms, all of our inner voices telling us we're not enough, and all those are the things that hold us back sometimes from being our greatest self, even more than physical limitations sometimes. Very often, and a personal example, I remember I was going to run the marathon when I was single, and I was sure I could run it, and I just started training, and to me it was like, yeah, of course I can run. Everyone runs a marathon. I was pregnant, 9 months pregnant. I was in a very strong psychological state then. So for me, like my thinking that I could made me have no problem training. Like I was running 5K pregnant. After I had my baby and I had depression and I felt so much smaller and less capable, I couldn't even run 1 minute. And the thought of even doing it, I was like, and I actually joined a 5K running group and I couldn't complete it. And it was much less about how much I'm physically able to run than how much I psychologically believe I can run. And I realized then how much of my physical limitations are actually psychological limitations. So in this cup, we're liberating ourselves, probably one of the greatest liberations from anything psychologically trapping us. And this is Rivka Imenu, because there's nobody more of our Imahos that was able to overcome her psychological entrapments than Rivka. Rivka grew up in Haran amongst such people who were psychologically what's the word I'm looking for? They were perverted. What? immoral society where everything that she heard was so messed up, but she was able to say, well, I don't like, this is crazy, right? I don't want to be a part of this. And at 3 years old, she was able to say, I want to go somewhere else and live with people who are normal. So she was able to always stay above the surroundings, stay above all the toxicity that was around her. And Rivka, that's why the Gemara calls her a rose amongst thorns. She was able to be internally not affected by her environment, not affected by all of the garbage that she was hearing. So Rivka gives us the strength. Rivka, our mother, right? So anyone here named Sara, raise your hand. You guys are giving us the strength, right? Because you're called Sara for a chain of women called after our mother. And Rivka, our mother, all of our mother, gives us the strength to overcome all of our psychological enslavement that comes really from inside of us. So it's bondage from within. And Rivka, and the truth is that even most of our psychological, or a lot of our psychological enslavement comes from our childhood. It comes from the way that we developed, what feelings that we felt, we have to people please to be good enough, that I have to be this to be good enough, I could never be this, things that we've heard. And most of us have some sort of trauma. We're learning more and more that almost everybody has some sort of trauma from their childhood that's truly holding us back. And if we can overcome that trauma and work through it, we can be so much more of who we're meant to be if we can work through the trauma and work through all the things that we used to get through our trauma when we were younger. Even if somebody didn't have huge trauma, we're now learning that we experience trauma in such different ways. And Rivka, Imenu represents that because Rivka had that childhood trauma and she was able to grow up and completely defy all of her childhood. The home, her parents were corrupt. Her father was trying to poison the man who came to bring her gifts, right? And he got killed. And she grew up, she saw her father killed. She grew up in the messed up society. Her whole family was lying and cheating, right? And not just her family, but the environment she grew up in, and being able to rise above that and become the woman that she was such an empowerment to us to know that we can overcome our childhood no matter how bad it was, right? We can get through it, and it doesn't have to hold us back. So that's the strength that we get from Rivka and Pesach, even though it says, so we can experience on Pesach maybe like the few years of therapy worth of growth of leaping through. That's someone told me recently that one apology, she got like one line from her mom saying like, if I would have known then what I know now, I would have done things so differently. She said that was like saved her like 2 years of therapy probably, because getting that like healing, right? So we know how healing it is to hear certain words. So in Pesach, we can really tap into this infinite potential to overcome the healing and to ask Hashem to be our healer and to heal us from anything that might have that happened to us when we were younger, or that was said to us, or that we internalized being sensitive when we were younger, to allow us to grow and be our greatest self now. So l'chaim, to overcoming any of the unconscious scripts, any of the voices that we hear that we tell ourselves, any of the negative self-talk, anything that's psychologically holding us back, any of the beliefs that come from our ego that we can't do it, because when it comes from Hashem is infinite. So if you're listening to your godly voice, you're infinite, you can do anything. Your ego is the one that tells you that you're not enough. But when it's truth, when it's emes, and you're connecting to Hashem, who's infinite, you can do anything. So l'chaim, to overcoming any psychological enslavements. This I connected to Yocheved because Yocheved in the Pesach story was the one who, again, didn't subscribe. This is my new word. My new favorite word, spiritual word, is unsubscribing from, I really love it because it helps me. It's a very current word, but there's so many things that we don't realize that we subscribe to, that like, for example, like I have to look like by not unconscious, you subscribe and you don't realize, like, when did I subscribe to this? Why am I getting spam from this for years? So we do that in our lives as well. We subscribe to so many beliefs just by looking around and seeing so many posters of people who lost their baby weight in 3 months, right? So we suddenly, somewhere deep in our consciousness, we subscribe to thinking that I need to lose my baby weight, in a certain amount of time, or I need to look like that to be, to be more worthy or to be more beautiful. We subscribe to so many things that people tell us, like, I need to do that to be successful. Or we subscribe to things believing like my family needs to go on that vacation once a year to be a good family, right? There's so many toxic things that we subscribe to. And it's like when you open up your social media and you're like, why am I following these people? Like, I don't want to follow these people. And we have to consciously, like, I made that conscious choice quite a few years ago to unfollow anyone on social media that gave me a bad feeling. I'm like, I don't want this. I don't need this negativity in my life. I don't want to know how you lost all your baby weight in 2 weeks, right? I will only follow people. I don't want to know this. I'm like, I don't know where I subscribe to this, but so the same way I physically go through my social media and clean it out from garbage and from people whose parents who are the perfect mommy parents, I'm like, I don't want to see that. I want to follow mommy realist, sarcastic mommy, schmicky mommy moments, and all those people, whatever, I want to follow real mommy, not, what do you call it? Shiitake mommy, whatever. Okay. Yeah, all those. Say it later off the camera. So you choose to, in the same way that you can choose to follow, and we don't realize how many things we absorb that tell us, I need to do this to be the best mom. I need to do this to be a good wife. We're not a good couple because we don't go on vacations like they do. We don't go on trips like that. And we have so many things that we subscribe to. And when we clean for chametz, we're literally unsubscribing from all these things that we don't realize. It's a time, the same way you're like, when did all this garbage come into my house? Like, spring cleaning is something that we all do. We're like, why is all this here? Like, who brought this into my house? Like, get away, right? And we're throwing out all this clutter, and we're like, why do I have like 100 lids and like 300 socks that don't have pairs? So we're like, why am I believing this? So, right, why do I have, right? And like all these crafts and papers and my kids' friends' crafts at my house, right? So we're like, where did this all come in? So in Pesach is a time when we go inwards and we say, like, let's find all those things that seep their way into our mind and covered our neshama and that hold us back, because those feelings really hold us back. They weigh on us. They make us heavier. They make us feel afraid. They make us feel afraid of trying our best because we're afraid to fail, because we're afraid that we're not enough. And so all these fears, let's just go through them and just unsubscribe from everything that we unknowingly subscribe to this month, this year, this past year, or for many years, right? And undo that. And Yocheved, who was Miriam's mother, she was so powerful in that way that the king of the country was telling her that she should go and kill all the Jewish baby boys, and she was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I don't care. Like, if you're the king. And she kept choosing to just not do what everyone else around her was doing, right? She said, I'm not going to kill my baby. This is my baby. I'm going to hide. I'm going to do things differently. Really, to me, that's really Miriam. I mean, I switched it this year. I decided that it's really Miriam more than anyone who chose to not like condition herself and not subscribe to the things everyone else around her. Even her father, who was a tzaddik, was saying, let's not have children, right? We can't have children if they're going to be killed. And she was like, you're thinking in the slave mentality. Like, you still have, just because you're a tzaddik, you have the slave mentality. That's such a slave mentality of thinking. Don't think like that. Have babies, right? You're killing everybody. So she was able as a little girl to realize that not to absorb this slave mentality way of thinking, and she was able to stay above it always. Miriam, even we learned that throughout Galus, when everyone else was like, get us out of here, she was like, we're not going to be here. Like, don't limit yourself to thinking we're going to be here forever. Let's make musical instruments because we're going to be free soon. So she was always able to not see things as like forever and spiral and say this is the worst case scenario, and no, this is temporary, this is not how things are meant to be, and always stay out of that bubble. So she never was absorbed by the toxicity around her or by the scary, even the real slavehood that people fell prey to, the fear mongering, right? When we have scary news and we're all running around fearful, we're just like, yeah, I'm not going to read that, right? I don't need to hear that, I don't read that, I don't believe in that, right? So many people, so many times we're so afraid, we're like, oh, there's, we really fall prey to so many things that are going on around us, and it consumes us. So Miriam, for me, is my like heroine who gives us that koach, and Rivka, to, in our genes, in our blood, Jewish, born Jewish or not Jewish, we all have the genes of the Imahos that are given to us to stay above the trends. So that's why I unsubscribe from all the toxic trends and followers and influencers that we should uninfluence. We should be uninfluenced by. Okay, now where do we go from here? Because now we're free already from physical limitations and psychological and emotional limitations. So we're free, right? Because if I'm not a slave and I don't have my slave mentality, right? And so what more freedom do I need, right? So where do we go from here? Where does the third cup take us? What do you guys think? What? Almost. We're not up to spiritual yet, almost. So it's interpersonal. The third cup helps us be free from interpersonal blockages, from interpersonal things. And we sometimes in our lives, at least personally, at least 1 year ago today, I remember just being in a great place on a flight to like be with my family for Pesach. I don't want to say I was free of physical and spiritual limitations, but I was in a good place. And then a conflict came towards me from somebody. And when there's external strife with others, when our interpersonal relationships, it can bring us down completely. So even if somebody's in a place where they feel infinite, right? And they in their bodies and in their minds and psychologically, but if there's strife with another person, it eats at us. It made me nauseous, made me not be able to eat. It like literally took over the first few days of my trip until I was able to really like recenter myself and like approach it like in a different way. So strife can really bring us down. And when we have discord or strife or hatred, if somebody's not speaking to a family member, if we're in a great place, but we're not like talking, our husband and I are not in a good place, we're not in a good place, we're not talking to each other, right? It tears us down, right? So even if we're free inside, if the people around us, if we're having conflict from people around us or hatred, God forbid, or sinas chinam, or even just fights and strife between our family, people that we love but don't necessarily like, right? Or people that we like but don't love, then it can really tear us down, and it can really hold us back from achieving our greatest potential. It can really pull us and suck us down and put us in a really, really bad place. That's just the way I look at how important it is to be able to heal and grow from any of interpersonal strife, any interpersonal imprisonment, enslavement that we have in our external relationships, right? Because sometimes someone could be, I'm saying for myself, like so like, so I love people, but when it comes to strife, I kind of just like fight or flight, like freeze up, like shut down, don't know how to communicate, right? Communication is so important, and then it could just really take over. So let's talk about the third cup. So the third cup is V'ga'alti eschem bizroya netua v'shvatim gedailim. So it's really Avas Yisrael. It's about having good relationships, and it's about having love and only love in all of the relationships in our lives, and leaving ourselves, not just being free ourselves, but extending that to everyone else around us. Let's speed this one up. Okay, so Rachel Imenu. So in this third cup, we daven and meditate that Hashem should remove gaps between different segments of our people, right through having more tolerance, more acceptance, so we can repair that rift between the children of Rachel and Leah. That we can see that we should daven that any rift in our life with anyone that we have, that we daven to Hashem, that Hashem heal that rift. That any rift that exists amongst Am Yisrael, amongst the right and the left, the religious, non-religious, and amongst the religious themselves, right? Amongst the secular themselves, all of those rifts, we daven that Hashem heal those. That's what Mashiach is, right? Golus is when we don't get along with one another. So we daven for healing amongst, to have achdus, to have less jealousy, to have more love, to grow that love. And that's what we're davening for in this time. That even if I'm on my greatest self, I want that I can expand that and have that love and walk around with everybody and not feel threatened by anybody, and that we don't sit down on a plane and then I have like the secular men telling me all the reasons they hate Haredim, or vice versa, right? And it's so painful. And there's nothing more painful as a parent than when our children, right, are fighting. There's nothing more beautiful when they get along. And to Hashem, right, there's no greater pain than when one arm and the other arm are like hurting each other. It's ridiculous, right? And I'm not saying I'm above it in any way. But this is Rachel Imenu, because Rachel epitomized self-sacrifice and putting herself aside for other people. And right, Rachel Imenu was one who gave up the love of her life in order that her sister shouldn't be ashamed. And that's what we want to do in our lives. We want to draw that string from Rachel, that we push ourselves to have more self-sacrifice, to have more Mesiras Nefesh Avas Yisrael. Because everyone in this room, I know, is an amazingly kind person who does chesed, right? And we all do so much chesed. And then Pesach, we want to expand our heart a little bit more and dive in, that we can give a little bit more, that we can think about other people, because Pesach, we're all just trying to survive sometimes, just like, how am I going to make Pesach in time and get a clean house and just like get through the Seder with my kids, but also to stop for a moment and think outside of ourselves and think about, is there somebody around me that I know, a neighbor, someone in my community who maybe doesn't have anyone to do Seder with, who doesn't have money for the Seder, who might be alone, who might even if I can invite them, I can send them something to their house. I can invite them to join me on a Chalamite trip, right? Think about anyone who you might reach out to who might not have even the things that you have. And it's a time to expand our circle, and that's what eating the Karban Pesach was meant to be, eaten specifically with a few families together, to expand that, to say that you might have a good nuclear circle, but you want to expand that nuclear circle to realize that we're Am Echad, and to know that you're not whole. We might feel whole. You might feel like you're your greatest self. You're maximize your potential, right? You're psychologically free now, right? But you're not actually whole if your brother is not whole, because we're one unit. So you're not, if one arm is fine and the other one isn't, you're not a complete person, right? If you're a Kohen, you can't work in the Beis Hamikdash, right? If one leg is longer than the other. So if I'm not actually whole, if another one of my brethren is suffering, if another one of my brethren is struggling. So it's to expand ourselves, to reach out to another person a little bit more, to open ourselves up, like every Chag, to think about how I can open that love, that circle of love, to one or two more people, to reach out more than my nature. And this is literally in the words that Ga'alti eschem bizroya netuya. Hashem is saying, I'm going to redeem you by you reaching out your arm. That Hashem reached out his arm, bizroya netuya, stretch out his arm, b'shvatim gedolim. It means stretching out our arms for another person. It means stretching our circle a little bit beyond our comfort zone, right? I heard that the key to growth, and this actually is really amazing for me, that because growth, so many times we come out inspired and we're like, I'm going to come out being like this, right? That doesn't work, right? Because we're not like that. I mean, except for Pesach. But normally when we want to expand ourselves and grow, the key to like growing is to push your like comfort zone a little bit, enough that it's a little bit out of your comfort zone, but not too much that you have resistance and you won't do it. So anytime I'm taking on something, like I'm going to start doing this as a parent, like every day I'm going to spend 10 minutes with each of my kids, right? And I'm like, so you do the resistance testing. I learned that word from you, Hannah. So like when I say that to myself, I'm like, yeah, right? Or am I like, if I say like, yeah, right, this is never going to happen, you do it, say it to yourself and hear how your body reacts to it. And if it's, yeah, right, then you're expanding your circle too much. It's going to pop, right? If you blow a balloon too much, it'll pop. But if I'm like, I could do like 10 minutes a week with each kid, with one kid. And if I could say that, and I feel like I could push myself to that, and I could feel that expanding, then if any women in Israel know what an epino is, an epino is when you like expand your cervix like a little bit at a time without like stretching and tearing, right? So that's what it is. It's expanding your circle until your circle gets bigger and bigger to the space you want to get it to be. I mean, that's how my picture is. Shani Tarragant taught me about the epino. I think it's a brilliant model for growth. So in this case, I don't even remember where I was talking about. Oh, expounding our circle of love. That we don't have to go and be like, from now on, I'm going to be like making dinners for everybody. But a little bit stretching our arm, a little bit more. Stretching means, right, when we grow and stretch, right, we stretch a little bit until suddenly we can touch our toes, right? So it's about stretching our chesed and including more and more people until it's comfortable and making it and incorporating it. And you don't even realize sometimes suddenly how much you stretch. And the person in the Pesach story epitomizes Bezori Natuya stretching out her hand. Which female heroine? Batya. Who's Batya here? All the Batyas? Speak up. All the Rachels. I know we have Rachel. Where's all more? We for sure have more Rachels. No shy Rachels? Okay. So let us draw strength from Rachel Imenu to break all the barriers between anyone that we have in our lives, between us and our spouses, us and our children and our families. Any rift that exists between us and another person, let us dive into Hashem to break all the rift, all of the jealousy in between all of Am Yisrael, and to be that person. And it started with just like intentionally smiling more at people I don't know and just like pushing myself in that way. And then it grows and it becomes easier. And then like that grows into like saying something nice to them. And then it expands us to just like create more of like a circle where we all feel like one people. So l'chaim.
Like that.
So we should learn from Rachel Imenu to go beyond ourselves for the sake of Abbas Yisrael and uniting Am Yisrael. So Batya, how does this connect to Batya? This is amazing. Batya, so Batya is really the true heroine of the story, because if Batya didn't save Moshe, right, we wouldn't be out of Egypt, right? I mean, as the story went, I'm sure Hashem would have found another way. But Batya, the craziest miracle really is that Batya even stretched out her hand. Because Batya's hand was like me stretching out to Mindy to high five her now, right? It's not possible, right? If I would be like, let me try to reach that line, there's no point in stretching out my hand. But the miracle was that Batya stretched out her hand, even though Moshe was not within reach, and just knowing that, and where's the miracle? Because if she didn't stretch out her hand, then Hashem would have done the miracle and lengthened her arm, and maybe Moshe would still be, somewhere in Egypt, right? Growing like with the who raised them? The angels, right? The angels raised the babies, right? And according to the Medrash. So the miracle, what we learn from this, the Rebbe teaches us, and it's such a beautiful, powerful message, is that so often we don't stretch out our hand to help somebody because I can't save that person, right? I don't have it in me to actually help that person. They need way more help than I could give them. So I'm like, there's no point in me reaching out, or like, I'm not equipped to help that person, right? But Hashem tells us, and the Rebbe tells us, that we learn from Batya actually, that he teaches us that all we really need to do is stretch out our hand. Your part is not to actually figure out how that baby's going to be saved. You just have to do your part. If you saw something happen that needs help, you need to stretch out your hand as far as it goes. How the baby's going to be helped is not your business, right? That's Hashem's business. Your business is to do your part and stretch your hand out as far as you could, right? You don't have to take every person on. And I learned this as a young girl. I felt like I made everyone my chesed project. Like I took them on my shoulders. I didn't sleep at night worrying them about them, and it was so unhealthy. But I realize now, I'm like, I didn't have to worry about them, about how Hashem's going to help them. That's Hashem's problem. I just have to know that if they're in my life, I stretch as far as I could, do what I need to do, and then let Hashem do the rest, right? Hashem could do the miracles, but I just need to do my part to reach out to somebody and push my hand out to somebody who needs it. And if it's going to work, if they're going to be helped or saved, that's God's plan, right? I'm not God, right? So I think that was a lot of ego there, thinking like, I literally felt like I have to save every person who needed saving. That was just like a God complex, right? Humility is saying, I don't need to save them. I just need to do whatever I need to do, be the vessel, and let Hashem do the rest. So that is Batya and Rachel. And lastly, now that we have healed, we're free of all physical limitations and constraints, right? So we're infinite. And we are not limited by any psychological things holding us back, right? So physical things can't hold us back. Psychological things can't hold us back. We have Baruch Hashem. We're overcoming all of the rifts and the schisms in the Am Yisrael. Now the true lakachti comes in. The true, really, the point where Hashem said, I wanted you the whole time, but you have to first get through these hoops to get to me, because you can't really be one with me if you have these issues, right? If you're so bogged down by this. So the true oneness and the true intimacy with Hashem comes in the lakachti. It's the fourth, of course, it's Leah. Let's hear it for all the Leahs. Any Leahs here? Yofi. That's right. Let's hear it for your sister. Is everyone pouring wine or just me?
Yeah. Just you.
I'm not as stunk as I drunk I am. So the fourth cup of wine is Leah. Now Leah, did I write this on your paper? That Leah? Nope, I didn't write this for you. Okay. So the last lashon of gula is v'lakachti eschem li la'am v'leisi lachem elokim. I will take you to me. That you're not. It's not just going to be I'm taking you out. I'm redeeming you. I'm going to take you to me. It's going to be me and you now. Now it's about me and Hashem. But which part of me am I like Hashem? What does this even mean? This is so cool. So it's interesting. The placement of where we do these 4 cups in the Gadda have a lot to do with the person that it's for. The Shalah says, right? Sara is where like Hashem separated, like Kol and whatever. Anyways, let's skip. Leah is said during Hallel, right? Leah, we drink the Leah cup, the 4th cup. I call them like the Sara cup, the Rivka cup, the Rachel cup. We drink the Leah cup over Hallel, over praising Hashem. Now, after having removed all the spiritual blockages, the physical, emotional, spiritual blocks of the 3 kosos, now we actualize our relationship with Hashem, right? Like we're at the top of the Maslow pyramid of needs. And now we communicate directly with Hashem with Shevach and Hoda'ah. So Leah is actually the first human being in the Torah, the first person in the Torah to thank Hashem, to praise Hashem. When did she do this? Yehuda, naming Yehuda, exactly. And when Leah had her 5th child, fourth child, she said, "Apam oz el Hashem," and that's the first time in the Torah that we see somebody saying, "I'm going to be grateful to Hashem. I'm going to thank Hashem." And this is the highest level that we can reach. Leah is the highest cup, is the 4th cup. It's the highest level that we can reach. When we can be gratitude and be Yehudim, we're called after Yehuda. This is the highest level because we see that from all the tribes, because Yehuda represents gratitude. Mashiach, she said that I understand now that even though I just had the pain of childbirth, of having a child, and all the pain that she went through in her life, I realized that I still can thank Hashem. I still have to look up to Hashem and thank Hashem. Make that, and I call like Leah as like the true opening in the hay. Doesn't matter what is going on, and she can easily say, I just gave birth to a baby. I did this work, right? Like I want my push present, but she was like, it's all Hashem. So in that moment when you just did all the hard work and you could look and say like, thank you Hashem, that's what it means to be a Yehudi. That's what Pesach is all about. That's opening the ches and making it a hay and having an opening from above to always look upwards and to draw that strength to know that in every moment of our lives, it's all Hashem. When I'm successful, when I push out a human being, it's Hashem. And when I fail and I mess up and I'm fired, that's also Hashem. If my marriage fails, that's Hashem also. It's the same way I thank Hashem for my greatness. When I failed, that wasn't me. Hashem wanted that for me. So where's our ego deciding that I failed? You didn't fail. You did what you're meant to do. And Hashem wanted this for it to happen. That was Hashem's failure, right? So if I could say if I had a good class and someone's like, it was such a great class, and I'm like, oh, it was all Hashem. Like I didn't prepare at all, right? Like I just dive into Hashem, which I did, right? But and then if I fail, if I have a really bad class, I can also say like, yeah, like I don't know, I prepared, like that's Hashem. Like Hashem didn't want that to go well, right? I don't have to ever feel bad because true greatness is being like Leah and saying, always thanking Hashem, even when things don't go well, and saying, it's Hashem, right? How I have to do my best, but how things turn out, like I have to do my part. But if things work out or don't work out, how they play out, if it's a success or not a success, if one person comes to your event or 30 or 40, that has nothing to do with me, right? All that is Hashem. I didn't bring any people here, right? That would be egotistical to feel that. And not to say that I don't have an ego. And if I have nobody here in my share, I also have to feel exactly the same way, that it's not because I'm better or worse that nobody came. It has nothing to do with me, right? And as a parent, as everything, we have to always remember that we're vessels we're shalichim of Hashem, that it's all Hashem. So Leah, that is the highest level truly of existing, of seeing things from a God consciousness, seeing things as Hashem seeing our greatness as Hashem seeing our potential as Hashem sees it. And that was Leah. Leah able to at every moment say, Odel Hashem, this is Hashem. In my dark times, in my light times, in my failures, in my successes, it's all Hashem. If I'm successful, Baruch Hashem. If I fail, Baruch, yeah. Don't talk to Hashem. Don't talk to me, right? I did my part. So you know who to talk to, right? If I succeed, say, yeah, go thank Hashem. What I mean, right? So we all know how it goes. So we're named after Yehuda. Our nation is called Yehudim after Yehuda. Mashiach comes from Yehuda, from Sheva Yehuda. And we wake up every morning and we begin by saying Moda'ani. We are literally like Yehuda central, like a nation about Oda and gratitude. And this is where we sing the Halal and we sing this cup of Leah and we realize that we have to get to that place. We really need to work through a lot of steps to get to there, those 4 cups of greatness, but we can always tap in, and every morning, no matter what kind of horrible day we had yesterday, we can start again by going straight to Leah and straight to Moda'ani. So in this 4th cup of wine we dive in. In this 4th cup of wine, we just dive in to be able to always to look upwards to Hashem and to always have Hashem with us and to always have that window open. And sometimes it's hard. It's like, oh, like I could just talk to Hashem now when things are so dark, and just remembering to have that window slightly open, it just makes everything so much lighter. So we should always have that window open, that communication with Hashem, the chance to praise Hashem, the chance to be thankful and grateful for all the good we have in our lives, and to be able to actualize and reach that level of greatness, because Hashem, it's really hard to be grateful when we're if we're imprisoned by so many other things. So we should all be at the place where we can wake up every day and have so much to be grateful for. L'chaim.
Amen. Shlucha.
L'chaim. The fifth cup of wine, which is Eliyahu Navi, because so the fifth cup of wine is there was actually debate of whether we should have it. It's about the Vehevesi. And the Chachamim said, we didn't fulfill it yet, so we can't drink that cup of wine because Hashem didn't actually bring us all, Mashiach hasn't come yet, actually. Even though we're in Eretz Yisrael, look around, we're not living in a time that represents what we think the world should look like. So therefore, we honor it by filling the glass and giving it to Eliyahu. And actually, the way that the Chachamim resolved it is by saying the word teku. Does anyone remember what teku stands for?
Something when yeah.
Tavo, who?
No, Teku is Tishbi.
Yavo.
Yavo.
Thank you. That right, Mashiach will come and he'll answer it. So we're saying that we don't know if we should drink it or not, but it's a cup of Mashiach. It's a cup of hope, and saying that we're starting this process and we're waiting for Mashiach to come and drink this glass of wine. So in the feminine, the women, we actually learned that every single woman in this generation and the generation right before Mashiach, which we are told is our generation, every single one of us sitting here is a reincarnation of a woman who left Mitzrayim. So the fifth cup of wine is that Geula, is the women who are going to lead us to the Geula. And it says that just like the women then led the Jewish people to Geula, and Miriam led everybody in song, that it's going to be the women now who are going to lead all of the Jewish people up towards Geula. So the fifth cup of wine is our cup. It's being blessed, it's being filled for us, and it's the cup that we're remembering that we could be at the forefront of being the leaders of the world now. We're so grateful. I'm grateful to be born into an era where we could be leaders. We don't have to be, hidden all the time, and we can really lead Bnei Israel and Am Yisrael to the ultimate Geula with Mashiach Tzidkenu. Thank you so much for joining. Let's break free of everything this year.
Powerhouse dynamo. Wow.
Oh. Okay, class tomorrow is canceled. Class